Well, exactly 6 p.m. in Cairo, ladies and gentlemen. Time to look up at the news bulletin from Channel 2. I'm Hanan Al-Khouri, and we start right away with the headlines. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi receives Turkish counterpart Erdogan for talks over bilateral ties and regional developments. Foreign Minister Abdel Ati and British National Security Advisor review regional and international developments over phone. An Israeli occupation showing and strikes killed 23 Palestinians in Gaza. Welcome back. The news in detail. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi and his wife, Mrs. Intisar el-Sisi, on Wednesday welcomed Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and his wife at the Presidential Palace. Erdogan has arrived in Cairo on a visit that aims to strengthen bilateral ties, discuss key regional issues. A red carpet reception ceremony was held for the Turkish president with guard of honor, and the national anthems for both Egypt and Turkey played. President el-Sisi and Erdogan, they held a press conference following their talks. El-Sisi and Erdogan said that they probed means of boosting relations, notably in the field of trade. They also probed the situation in Gaza and implementing the Trump plan for peace. The Turkish president expressed his rejection to the Israeli breaches of the peace agreement in Gaza. Later, the two leaders will participate in the closing session of the Egyptian-Turkish businessmen or business forum that will be held with the business community and financial and economic institutions from the two countries. As part of Turkish President's visit to Egypt, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi and Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan co-chaired the Strategic Cooperation Council meeting. Afterwards, they signed a communique after holding the high-level bilateral meeting in Cairo. Also following their talks in Cairo, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi and Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan witnessed the signing of memos of understandings between Egypt and Turkey. The signed agreements included a memo on upgrading local medical industries between the governments of both countries, another on foreign trade. The Supreme Constitutional Court holds a press conference on Thursday to announce details of the holding of the African Constitutional Higher Court's Constitutional Council in Cairo. A statement said that the meeting will be held on Saturday and Sunday at the new capital. Foreign Minister Dr. Badr Abdel Ati and Mr. Jonathan Powell, British National Security Advisor, exchanging views regarding regional issues over a phone call on Wednesday. Foreign Minister spokesman Ambassador Tamim Khalaf said that the call tackled the recent developments in Iran, as Foreign Minister Abdel Ati stressed the need for a de-escalation to avoid all types of conflicts and instability. The Foreign Minister urged conditions supportive of the resumption of the U.S.-Iran dialogue leading to a comprehensive peace settlement. The call also tackled the latest developments in Palestine, strengthening the international community's responsibility to ensure the implementation of the second phase of U.S. President Donald Trump's peace plan. This paves the way for the early recovery and reconstruction of Gaza and ensures unhindered humanitarian aid flow. While the call also reviewed Sudan's situation, emphasizing Egypt's stance supporting Sudan's sovereignty, unity, and territorial integrity. Minister of Foreign Affairs Badr Abdelati received a phone call from Mr. Antonio Tajani, Italy's Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs, at Tuesday evening. The call tackled ways to strengthen bilateral relations between the two friendly countries and the latest developments regarding the Iranian nuclear issue. Abdelati praised the distinguished relations between the two friendly countries during the call, also emphasizing the commitment to enhancing all aspects of bilateral relations and elevating them to broader horizons. He also expressed his willingness to continue boosting economic and investment relations with Italy and to further trade exchange between the two countries, in addition to strengthening cooperation in the field of renewable energy. The two ministers also exchanged views on the accelerating developments related to Iran. The ministers stressed the priority that Egypt gives to de-escalation by strengthening the political and diplomatic paths. Well, moving on to the development or latest developments in the Palestinian territories, as Israeli tank shelling and airstrikes killed 23 people, including women and children, in the Palestinian territory of the Gaza Strip on Wednesday. The Israeli attacks targeted Gaza City and the southern city of Khan Yunis and come in fresh violations of a ceasefire that began in October.
Gaza Civil Defense Agency said a series of Israeli air attacks on Wednesday killed 12 people in the Palestinian territory, including 3 children, and left 30 others wounded. The latest bloodshed came despite a U.S. brokered truce entering its second phase last month. It also comes days after the Israeli-controlled Palestinian side of Rafah crossing with Egypt reopened, allowing tens of wounded Palestinians to receive treatment abroad. Farah crossing is the only exit for Gazan that does not pass through Israel. Under the second phase, initial work of prepare for a reconstruction of Gaza Strip should begin nearly after 2 years of Israeli aggressions and blockade that turned most of the Palestinians.
Well, for a third day, Gaza's Rafah border crossing was open on Wednesday for Palestinians wishing to return from Egypt to the Palestinian enclave under an October ceasefire deal. A third batch of returnees have arrived at the Egyptian side of the crossing, waiting for enter Gaza through the Rafah gate after its reopening on Monday for the first time in almost 2 years. On the Palestinian side, Palestinian officials said that Israel held the passage of patients through the Rafah border crossing, and about 20,000 Palestinians are in need of medical care, and that is unavailable in Gaza after 2 years of Israeli war. A bus with about 40 Palestinians and that entered Gaza via Rafah on Tuesday arrived at Al Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis early Wednesday morning, where their families welcomed them after spending the entire day waiting. Through held as a step forward for the fragile ceasefire struck in October, it took more than 10 hours for only about a dozen returnees and a small group of medical evacuees to cross in each direction on the first day Rafah reopened. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office said that Netanyahu told U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff that the Palestinian Authority would not be part of post-war Gaza's governance in any way. In a statement after the meeting ended, the office said that Israeli Prime Minister clarified that the Palestinian Authority will not be involved in the administrating the Strip in any way. Under U.S. President Donald Trump's Gaza ceasefire plan that ended a 2-year Israeli war in the Palestinian territory. A technocratic National Committee for the Administration of Gaza, NCAG, was formed to handle day-to-day affairs. Well, Iraqi's main candidate for the premiership, Nouri al-Maliki, said that withdrawing his candidacy would jeopardize Iraqi sovereignty following U.S. threats last week that U.S. President Donald Trump issued an ultimatum, declaring that Maliki is a very bad choice, and if he was elected, the U.S. will no longer help Iraq. In an interview, Maliki was asked whether he would withdraw if his candidacy posed a threat to Iraq's interests. He replied that he would withdraw only if his bloc asked him to do so. After Trump's threats, the coordination framework, which holds a parliamentary majority, reiterated its support for Maliki. Moving on to Iran, as U.S. and Iran are due to hold talks in Oman on Friday after Tehran requested a change of venue to limit negotiations to its nuclear program. A regional official said with a build-up of U.S. forces in the Middle East, raising fears of a confrontation. Iran wanted the meeting to take place in Oman as a continuation of the previous rounds of talks held in the Gulf Arab country on its nuclear program, and asking for a change of location from Turkey to avoid any expansion of the discussions to issues such as Tehran's ballistic missiles. Moving on to the latest development in the Ukrainian-Russian war, as envoys from Moscow and Kyiv met in Abu Dhabi on Wednesday for another round of U.S. broker talks on ending the almost 4-year war, as Russian nuclear cluster munitions killed 7 people at a market in Ukraine. In another development, Russian shelling killed at least 6 people in the town of Druzhkivka in eastern Ukraine, whose capture and key aim of advancing Russian forces. Pakistani's security forces used drones and helicopters to wrest control of a southwestern town from extremists after a 3-day battle, as the number of civilians and security personnel killed in the violence rose to 58. Saturday's wave of coordinated attacks by the Liberation Army brought Pakistan's largest province to a near standstill as extremists set off explosives and exchanged fire with security forces in more than a dozen places. President Donald Trump signed a roughly $1.2 trillion spending package to end the partial government shutdown on Tuesday, hours after the House passed the bill in a bipartisan vote, and the measure funds most of the federal government through the 30th of September, while providing the Department of Homeland Security with short-term funding for 2 weeks. And with the important economic segments, as Egypt's Boursa closed higher on Wednesday amid purchases by local and Arab investment funds and corporations against sell-offs by Arab investors and foreign corporations. The market capital of listed companies gained 27 billion Egyptian pounds, reaching 3.2 trillion pounds at the end of transactions that exceeded 8 billion pounds. The benchmark index EGX 30 rose to 1.33% above the 49,000 point mark. The equal weighted indices EGX 70 and the more expanded EGX 100 climbed to 0.61% and 0.73% respectively. Well, but the official data showed on the, by this, ladies and gentlemen, the official data showed on Wednesday that Eurozone inflation eased to 1.7% in January, and thanks to a faster decline in the budget or the in energy costs. The interesting news of the sports world as Zamalek will face Kahraba al-Ismailia in the Egyptian Premier League 17th round on Wednesday at 8 p.m. Cairo local time. The White Knights are placed 4th in the tournament table with 25 points from 13 matches, and Kahraba al-Ismailia have 11 points from 15 encounters. In the same round, Pyramids face Smuha at Burj Al Arab Stadium. Pyramids placed second in the Premier League table with 28 points, and Smuha in the 8th place with 22 points. Well, with this, ladies and gentlemen, come to the end of our news bulletin for now. Many thanks for watching, and from myself, Hanan Al Khul.